This is the Student Teaching Info session for any student who is eligible and plans to student teach during the 2022-2023 academic year. I'm Melissa Robinson, Field Experience Coordinator for the School of Education and Human Sciences, which means I arrange field experiences, student teaching, and practicum experiences for our students in surrounding PK-12 schools. I've worked behind the scenes with your faculty up until now, but we will get to interact more during your final year. Before we dive in, I'm going to take a moment to orient you to this webpage. Right below the video, there is a link to the PDF version of this PowerPoint presentation. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see my name and contact information, as well as two sidebars that I'll reference frequently during this video. The top is entitled Required Forms. It includes links to the materials that you will need to complete and submit for student teaching, as well as the advanced teaching practicum for secondary students. The sidebar underneath is entitled Student Teaching Resources. There you'll find links to informational handouts and web pages that will assist you in completing your forms and in making choices about your placement preferences. Lastly, I urge you to pause this presentation at any time to jot down notes, take a look at the sidebar links, or simply take a break and come back to it later. Listed below are sort of the bare bones requirements to be eligible to student teach. Your overall GPA must be a 2.75 or higher. Your GPA in your major, which is your content area, must be a 2.5 or higher. So if you're Spanish education, these are your Spanish courses. If you're language arts, these are your English courses. You must have completed all of your required education courses with a grade of C or higher. You cannot have an incomplete in any education course. These are your pedagogy courses, the courses that are teaching you how to teach. You must complete and submit the required forms by the due date. I will explain those requirements and due dates later in the presentation. And the link at the bottom of this slide will take you to our student teaching handbooks. It is also included in the student teaching resources sidebar. Please take the time to read the handbook that applies to you. Now a few slides about student teaching itself. I'm not going to go into great detail here because the details vary program to program. You can review your student teaching handbook or email me if you have a specific question. But across the board, here are the highlights. Student teaching is a course with an instructor and with a syllabus. Most of you will have specific assignments to complete during your experience. Student teaching is full-time, not just during school hours. We advise student teachers to get to school before their clinical supervisor, which is our term for cooperating teacher, and to stay until the teacher leaves for the day. Student teachers are expected to participate in professional development, parent-teacher conferences, etc. Elementary, middle secondary, and music students will begin their student teaching when their clinical supervisor reports to school in August and in January. Art and PE Plus begin when KU classes commence. UEC students adhere to their teacher's start date in the fall, but not in the spring. Everyone will also follow their placement school spring break, so please do not plan any vacations that would require you to miss school days in between early August and mid-May of next year until you are certain of your placement school schedule. They will be considered unexcused absences and your grade will suffer. You will take full control of the classroom, but not immediately. Most student teachers observe the first week and then gradually take on responsibility until they have full control. You'll be assigned a university supervisor, which is a KU representative that acts as a resource and main point of contact for both you and your clinical supervisor. This person is usually a graduate student, a faculty member, or a former teacher or administrator. Most of you probably already know your student teaching timeline, but just to review, elementary education students complete 2 student teaching experiences, one at primary and one at intermediate level. The fall experience is shorter than the spring experience. Middle secondary and foreign language students complete a practicum in the fall and student teaching in the spring. Whenever possible, one experience is at middle level and one is at high school level. STEM Teach KU students complete one semester-long student teaching experience in either middle or high school in the fall or the spring. Art, music, and PE students complete 2 student teaching experiences, one at elementary and one at either middle or high school level. Both are approximately 8 weeks long. UEC students also complete 2 student teaching experiences, one in a primary elementary classroom and the other in their unified early childhood classroom, with the fall experience being the shorter one. Again, most other details about student teaching can be found in your program's Student Teaching Handbook. Now onto the placement process and the required paperwork, which is the real purpose of this presentation. The most common question I receive is, can I ask to be placed in a certain district, school, or with a certain teacher? And the answer is no, you cannot. However, students are allowed to preference area and type of school. More about that in a moment. It's important to remember that school districts make these placements, and they receive requests from all neighboring universities, even some not so neighboring, like Fort Hays, Emporia, Wichita, and even out of state. Students also cannot student teach in a school where they have family attending, have family employed, or they attended at any time. The same school district is fine though. Students with multiple experiences during the senior year are placed in different districts whenever possible so that they can experience a variety of school settings. In line with not being able to guarantee certain placements, reliable transportation is required. There is simply no way to guarantee a placement within a certain distance of your home or on the bus route. We will do what we can to facilitate carpooling and to keep your commute reasonable, but it is ultimately your responsibility to be able to get from point A to point B. That being said, if you have a legitimate personal or medical concern that would interfere with your ability to travel, please contact me or your advisor. We have had students in the past who could not drive for medical reasons or had special accommodations through the university. Please reach out if you are in a similar situation. There are several forms that you will need to complete for student teaching, some hard copy and some online. They are the online student teaching request form, a health assessment and TB test, professional liability coverage, a background check clearance, and bloodborne pathogen training. For those of you who are student teaching or are secondary students completing the advanced teaching practicum in fall 2022, your due dates are as follows. The online student teaching request form must be submitted by the end of the day on February 25th. The rest of your requirements are due by the end of the day on April 15th. For the remainder of you who are either visual art, music, STEM Teach KU, or PE Plus students who are not student teaching until spring 2023, all of your required forms are due by the end of the day on August 26th. You should scan these forms and email them to Melissa Robinson on the due date. Okay, let's go through each requirement one by one. The online student teaching request form is the form I work from when processing your request. That is why it is due earlier than the other forms. It is also why it is important for your submission to be accurate and clear. In the next few slides, we are going to go through it step by step. The link to the form is available in the Required Forms sidebar. FYI, before you begin this form, you cannot start it and come back to it later, and it will time you out if it's left inactive for 30 minutes, so make sure you have about 20 to 45 minutes of free time before you begin. As I mentioned before, the form doesn't take too long to complete, and I'm going to go through the sections with you here so you can be thinking about them before you begin. The first section just involves providing your general contact and program information. Next, you are asked about endorsements. This only applies to you if you are working toward a TESOL or Provisional Special Education endorsement, have completed or plan to complete the preliminary coursework prior to student teaching, and would like to complete your endorsement practicum in conjunction with student teaching. If you're thinking, I don't understand anything she just said, you can just select Not Applicable and move on. If you know this applies to you, please select either ESL or SPED from the dropdown. A caveat: If you have already completed the coursework and practicum for your TESOL endorsement or plan to receive your TESOL endorsement by exam only, then this is a situation where you would select Not Applicable from the drop-down menu. For more general information about endorsements, you can review the TESOL and Special Education Endorsement handout that I included under Student Teaching Resources sidebar on this page. I'm not spending a ton of time on this because it will only apply to a handful of you, but please review the handout and reach out to me if you have questions. Next, you'll indicate your placement preferences. This is the part that both exhilarates and terrifies most students. As I've already said, you're not allowed to preference specific districts, schools, or teachers, but you can preference whether you would like to be placed in the Lawrence or Kansas City area and whether you would like to be placed in a suburban, rural, or urban school district. Go ahead and open the Placement Districts handout under Student Teaching Resources and take a look at it. This is a pretty complete list of the districts in which I place our student teachers and their area and type designations. This chart may help you in making your selections on this portion of the form. Students can also request a private, usually Catholic school placement. Any of you interested in that should contact me via email for further discussion. Lastly, I also ask that you let me know the city you will be living in next year so I can try to keep your commute reasonable. If your number one preference is Lawrence area, suburban district, and I see that you live in Topeka, I will try to place you in Shawnee Heights or Auburn Washburn before I try to place you in Lawrence to keep you closer to home. Hopefully that makes sense. As I also mentioned earlier, students cannot be placed in a school they have attended, have family attending, or have family employed. Here is where you self-report what PK-12 schools you've attended or have family attending or working. Most school districts have a similar policy in place, so they will be checking on their end as well, and it would not reflect well on you if you were dishonest. There is also a notes section for you to let me know whatever information you feel I need to know, but maybe you weren't able to communicate through the form selections. So, I have a health condition that impacts my ability to drive, or I don't really have a placement area preference, or I am bilingual and I'd love the opportunity to utilize that skill during my experience, are all examples of the types of things I might see here. Lastly, write 2 to 3 paragraph statement of introduction that gives the placement district and teacher a glimpse into who you are and why you want to be a teacher. This section will be read by others, so please be mindful of content and grammar. Every semester, I have a handful of requests that are refused because this introduction is so poorly written, and most of the time it's just because students have rushed through it. On that note, I also want to take a moment to mention your social media presence. Now is the time to make sure that your profiles are set to private or to deactivate them entirely. Each year, I have more requests denied because the district rep or the principal or the clinical supervisor, etc., Google the potential student teacher and find unprofessional or inappropriate posts on their social media. Your online presence is very much a representation of yourself and a first impression to administrators, colleagues, students' parents, etc. It's important to begin thinking about that now, since your requests will be sent out to the district offices by mid-March. Okay, back to the form. If you do not want to apply to the PDS program, you can continue to the review page, review your selections, make changes if you'd like, and then submit your form. You're done. If you would like to apply to the Professional Development Schools or PDS program, you have one more section to complete. The PDS application consists of only two things. We ask you to designate the semester or semesters in which you'd like to be placed in a PDS site and to write 1 to 2 paragraphs about why you want to be a part of the PDS program. As I mentioned earlier, I urge you to visit the PDS website linked in the resources sidebar to learn more about the program and/or reach out to Dr. Nicole Babalola to ask questions or set up a time to talk about the program and explore whether it would be a good fit for you. When you are finished, go to the review page to verify your entries and selections and then submit your form. 24 to 48 hours later, after submitting the online request, you will receive an email confirmation from me that will include a summary of your selections and entries. You will find the Health Assessment TB test form by clicking the first link in the Required Forms sidebar. There are two parts to this form that you must have completed, signed, and dated by a physician, physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. The middle portion is where the medical professional will indicate that you are negative for TB. The bottom is where they will indicate that you've had a health assessment and you are in good health. This completed form should be submitted to me. If you already have a health TB form completed for another reason, you can submit a copy as long as it is not dated older than 1 year from the day you will begin your experience. That is generally the second week of August in the fall and the first week of January in the spring. You can have the health assessment and TB test administered at Watkins, your regular doctor's office, or any walk-in clinic. Just please keep in mind that the TB test does take 48 hours to read, so don't wait until the last minute to schedule your appointments. Also make sure that when you schedule your appointments, you make it clear that you need both a TB test and a health assessment. I have arranged special clinics at Watkins Health Center specifically for our student teachers. You can find information about those clinics in the resources sidebar on this webpage. If they work with your schedule, please utilize this resource. Professional liability coverage is a little different than the liability coverage that we are most familiar with. This coverage protects you financially in the event of a lawsuit, and the school districts require that student teachers have this coverage. It can be obtained through a variety of insurance providers, but most of our students choose to join KNEA's student program since it provides $1 million of coverage as a benefit of membership. It's easy to sign up, and it will cover you for the entire academic year. If you choose to go with KNEA for your coverage, you can sign up online after April 1st. If you sign up prior to April 1st, you will be signing up for the 2021-2022 academic year, which you do not want to do, and KNEA will not transfer your enrollment. If you join KNEA for your liability coverage, there is no need to submit anything to me because I will verify your membership with them in May. The URL for the online membership form can be found on this PowerPoint slide and in the Required Forms sidebar. If you'd rather obtain this coverage through a standard insurance provider, that is perfectly fine too, but in that case, I will need you to provide me with proof of coverage with the rest of your paperwork. If you have any questions about what that might look like, feel free to email me. Next, in the Required Forms sidebar, you will see a link entitled Background Check Instructions. This form will take you through the process of submitting your information online for a background check. We contract with a company called Validity Screening Solutions for our students' background checks because the districts in which we place students also use this company for their own staff and teachers. After completing the online form and paying the $36 fee, you'll receive an emailed receipt. Please submit that to me so I can see that you've done your part while we wait for the results. When your background check is ready, both you and I will receive an email notifying us. You can log in to the Validity website and view your report, and I will be able to do the same. A copy of your report will be sent to the district when your placement is confirmed, so if you are worried about anything showing up, please reach out to me ahead of time so we can have a private conversation about next steps, if there are even any that need to happen. Most school districts, like KSDE, are concerned about crimes related to drugs, theft, or children. School districts also require that student teachers complete Bloodborne pathogen training. This training teaches you how to handle a situation where you might encounter blood or other bodily fluids. Follow the link in the Required Forms sidebar to register for and complete the free training online. When you have finished and passed the comprehension quiz at the end, a certificate will become available to you that you will be able to either print or save to your computer. You will turn that in to me. I will send fall student teaching requests to the districts in mid-March and spring student teaching requests in mid-September. PDS placements are made by the program director, so that timeline varies a bit from mine. I will receive confirmations for some placements quickly, and I will email you with those details as soon as I receive them. Others will take until the end of the semester. We are really at the mercy of the district's timeline. As a rule of thumb, larger districts take longer to get back to me. When you receive the email from me with your placement information, please reach out to your clinical supervisor, cooperating teacher, immediately to introduce yourself and thank him or her. It's important to be excited and make a good first impression. You are about to enter what will most likely be the most formative experience of your college career, so do what you can to ensure it begins in a positive way. Okay, that was a ton of information, both spoken and written. You're probably either asleep or curled up in a ball, rocking back and forth, and that is okay. It's normal to be feeling a lot of conflicting feelings about next year, but you are going to do great. Getting these forms completed is the first step, and I and a whole team of people, from faculty to your advisor to our entire staff, are here and ready to support you. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions or concerns. My contact information is in the PowerPoint and below this video. Lastly, make sure you check the box below that indicates you have watched this PowerPoint presentation and understand the information that was relayed to you. Thank you for your time. I'm excited for the opportunity to get to know you and help you navigate this experience.